it on for you.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber. Close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session, and someone has stolen my gavel. Who stole that cowbell of Andy Holt's back in the day? I don't know. We're going to fingerprint it. There we go. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Russell will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Russell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to introduce a good friend of mine from Monroe County, Dr. Ted Waters. We all call him Teddy. Dr. Waters holds a BA in Theology, Master's in Ministry, Doctorate in Biblical Apologetics. He has been pastoring for 51 years and has been in law enforcement for the past 22 years. He has spent 20 years as a chaplain at the Cocke County Sheriff's Office, Sweetwater Police Department, and the Tennessee State Constables Association. For 18 years, he was a volunteer firefighter. At the present, he is a school resource officer at Sweetwater Police Department. He is the pastor at First Free Will Baptist Church in Oak Ridge, as well as the First District Constable in Monroe County for the past 12 years. His wife of 46 years, Ella, is here in the gallery today, and they have 2 children and 2 grandchildren. Please welcome Dr. Ted Waters.
I would like to thank the chairman of the House, Mr. Sexton, and my friend Lowell Russell for the invitation to be here. I wanted to start with reading scripture, and then we'll go to our prayer. In the book of Matthew, Jesus taught his disciples to pray. And he says in verse 9, "After this manner, therefore, pray ye, Our Father which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us not our debts as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever. Amen." 5 things in this prayer that we need to model our prayers behind. First of all, we need to reverence God. Secondly, we need to recognize his sovereignty. Thirdly, we need to see that he is the sustainer of life. Fourthly, we need to learn to forgive one another as he forgives us. And then the last thing, we need to seek his direction for our steps. If you would, bow with me in prayer. Father, we first of all want to hallow your name. We come from different walks of life. there are people here from various other religious beliefs, and we respect that. But Father, today, as we pray from the Christian perspective, we acknowledge you as the sovereign of this universe, creator of all that's here and all that exists. And Father, before we begin to ask anything, we first have to give you glory for who you are. And we pray now that you will give these men and women the wisdom to make decisions that will affect the residents of this state, and not just the ones who are alive today, but those in the future too. And we thank you for every one of them because they've given so much of their life to serve the public. And then, Father, we're so grateful to you that you are the sustainer of life. Without you, we wouldn't be here. We thank you that we had safety last night with the storms that came through. And we thank you for all the other blessings, and we thank you for the safety of travel that these men and women have had coming to this session. And Father, we ask today that you will bless, and all that's accomplished today, that it'll be for your glory. For I pray in Christ's name, amen.
Representative Russell will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Attention, salute, pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, I'm kind of tired.
Mr. Speaker, 91 members present.
Let the journal reflect that Representatives Alexander, Hall, Griffey, Lynn, and Haston are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring. We have some presentations, so let's hold on 1 second. Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that House Bill 2021 be set for the regular calendar number 2, be considered later today. I've consulted with the minority leader, and there's no objection.
You've heard the motion. There are any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Representative Farmer, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guests into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, escort the guests to the well, please.
Stand right here. Stand right here. We'll try to get you. Try to get everybody in here.
Representative Farmer, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Joint Resolution 672 by Chairman Farmer, Leader Lamberth, and others. A resolution to recognize Deborah Taylor Tate on the occasion of her retirement. Whereas it is appropriate that the members of this General Assembly should honor those citizens who have performed with uncommon devotion and enthusiasm throughout their years of public service. And whereas Deborah Taylor Tate is one such estimable person who has distinguished herself as a professional of the greatest dedication, ability, and integrity. And whereas having served with distinction as Administrative Director of Administrative Office of the Courts since January 2015, Ms. Tate will be taking a much-deserved retirement in early 2022. And whereas Deborah Tate was appointed by the Tennessee Supreme Court in January 2015 to oversee the administrative functions of the state court system, during her tenure, she is credited with increasing the stature and funding of the AOC, overseeing the extensive broadening of the court's involvement with other branches, including the implementation of 12 safe baby courts, leading efforts to stem the impact of the opioid and addiction epidemic, and coordinating 2 eviction summits during the height of the pandemic. And whereas her multiple disciplinary efforts expanded access to justice programs, including most recently a justice bus to deliver legal and other support services into rural communities. And whereas in addition to serving as Chief Operating Officer, she is currently serving as co-chair of the Conference of Chief Justices and the Conference of State Courts Administrators, National Opioid Task Force, and on the CORSCA Board of Directors, the Juvenile Justice Task Force, the Tennessee Consolidated Retirement System Board of Trustees, the Information Systems Council, the Human Trafficking Advisory Council, the 3-Branch Institute, and the Tennessee Domestic Violence State Coordinating Council. And whereas a former commissioner of the Federal Communications Commission, Ms. Tate, who was twice nominated by President George W. Bush and unanimously approved by the U.S. Senate to the FCC, began her professional career in Tennessee state government and served as assistant legal counsel and senior policy advisor to 2 former Tennessee governors, Don Sundquist and Lamar Alexander. And whereas a 5th-generation Tennessee native, Deborah Tate was born in Murfreesboro and received both her Bachelor of Arts degree and Juris Doctor degree from the University of Tennessee, Knoxville, and also studied at Vanderbilt University Law School while working as a law clerk to Governor Alexander. And whereas Deborah Tate is wholly committed to the noble precepts of public service that have earned Tennessee recognition as a volunteer state, and she is to be especially commended for her exemplary service as Administrative Director of the Administrative Office of the Courts and for her many years of honorable and astute service to the citizens of Tennessee. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee, the Senate concurring, that we extend to Deborah Taylor Tate our heartfelt wishes for a happy and fulfilling retirement, offering our deepest gratitude for her distinguished service to this state, and wishing her every continued success in her future endeavors.
Representative Farmer, you're recognized.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. This is my first opportunity to give a resolution, and what an honor it is to be able to give Miss Deborah Taylor Tate's retirement resolution in front of this body. Talking about a lady who has achieved so much and done so many things for this body, this chamber, the chamber across the hall, this administration and many administrations beforehand. She's given a lot of dedication in her life to making Tennessee a better place and helping it be the great state that it is today. So it is my honor to introduce Miss Deborah Taylor Tate. Her husband, Bill Tate, is here with her today. Her daughter, Khaki, and son-in-law, Parker Brown, are with us today. We have Will Tate, Amanda Tate, daughter-in-law. We have a few other people that folks may know here. We have Chief Justice Roger Page is with us. We have Justice Sharon Lee, Justice Jeff Bivens, Justice Sarah Campbell, Michelle Long, I believe she's standing right there. She's with us today. And Charlie's with us as well. Charlie Baldwin with the AOC Legislative Council. And I saw Rachel Harmon. I believe Rachel is on my left there. And thank you for being here as well. If I left anybody out, I do apologize. But members, I know a lot of you, if not most everyone in here, knows Debbie. Debbie has, I guess she started working with the AOC in 2015, a couple of years after I got elected. And there were some things that were going on within the court, within this body and the chamber across the hall that was an issue. And I worked with Debbie a lot and worked with the justices at that point in time and tried to help the court get through that, and they did. And just appreciate her so much, as we all do. And just want to tell you that thank you for all your hard work and everything you've done for us in this state. And I just want to give you an opportunity to say a few words if you'd like.
May it please the court. And Mr. Speaker, thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Farmer, and for Leader Lamberth and all of you all who are gathered here. I just appreciate it so very much. You can't imagine. The Senate did this for me a few years ago, and I didn't even know it was going on. And so this is just overwhelming to me. And I just cannot thank you all enough for this honor. I am so proud of this state. I am so proud to have worked for this state. And I just want to thank all of you all. As the chairman said, my family is here except for my son and daughter-in-law and new grandson that many of you all have heard about in Atlanta. And I want to thank them all for being on this journey. Bill and I have been married for 42 years. Gosh, that sounds forever. And then I want to thank the Tennessee Supreme Court, who reached out to me and had the confidence in me to appoint me to what is called the sixth justice of the Supreme Court. And so being an attorney, this is really the highest honor that our profession can bestow on someone. And I want to thank them for all their support and leadership. I'm especially proud of their leadership during the pandemic and the fact that we were able to keep courts open remotely and to protect constitutional rights. I want to thank all of the AOC who is here today. You heard many of their names, and especially Michelle Consiglio Young, that I know this would not have happened without her. And so thank you so much. Bobby Trotter and I worked together for Governor Sunquist. I want to thank Governor Alexander and Governor Sunquist, who gave me so many opportunities at a very young age and truly launched my career and enabled me to go to Washington and have a presidential appointment. And finally, to you all, to every single one of you all are citizen legislators. You all are the ones that our forefathers created as the underpinnings of our democracy. And I can't thank you all enough for your service every single day. You impact Tennessee and every citizen every day. There's no greater challenge and no greater honor than public service. And you all are all truly public servants. So I'm forever grateful for this honor, for today, for this moment, for you all giving me the opportunity to publicly say thank you to you all and to the Supreme Court that I owe so much. So may we all follow Micah 6:8 to do justice, show mercy, and walk humbly with God. Thank you.
Representative Farmer.
And Debbie, we had this resolution prepared for you and framed, hoping that you could place it somewhere in your home or office so that you won't forget about us. So,
This is beautiful.
thank you so much for your service. And Mr. Speaker, would you join us for a picture? Thank you.
Representative Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, I request that the Sergeant at Arms escort our guest into the chamber.
Mr. Sergeant of Arms, escort the guests to the well, please. Representative Vaughn, you are recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I request that the clerk read the resolution.
Mr. Clerk, please read the resolution.
House Resolution 128 by Chairman Vaughn, a resolution to honor Morgan Cox, long snapper for the Tennessee Titans. Whereas it is fitting that this legislative body should honor the native son of University of Tennessee graduate who has excelled throughout a 12-year career in the National Football League. And whereas a native of Collierville, Morgan Cox attended Evangelical Christian High School and was instrumental in the Eagles' overall gridiron success, helping lead the team to a state championship appearance as a senior and in the semifinal game as a junior. And whereas a senior, Morgan played center and long snapper for the Eagles and received All-State honorable mention recognition and the Commercial Appeal Best of Preps Award. And whereas after graduating from high school, Morgan Cox was a walk-on player for the University of Tennessee Volunteers football team. And whereas Mr. Cox was the Vols long snapper for 3 seasons from 2007 to 2009 and 38 games and earned an athletic scholarship from UT prior to the 2008 season, a gifted scholar, he earned academic All-SEC honors from 2006 to 2009 and graduated with a degree in accounting. And whereas an undrafted free agent following the 2010 NFL draft, Morgan Cox signed with the Baltimore Ravens in 2010 and soon became a starter as the team's long snapper. And whereas he executed his assignment as Baltimore's long snapper with distinction, Morgan Cox was named to the Pro Bowl 4 times, 2015, 2016, 2019, and 2020. And last year, he became the first long snapper ever named to an All-Pro team. And whereas in 2011, Mr. Cox received the team's Ed Block Courage Award after returning from significant injury he suffered in 2010. And whereas a responsible citizen, in addition to being an outstanding football player, Morgan Cox was an integral part of the Ravens' social justice initiatives. And whereas the ultimate achievement for any NFL player is a Super Bowl ring, Morgan Cox earned that honor as a member of the 2012 Baltimore Ravens team that won Super Bowl 47. And whereas on March 19, 2021, Morgan Cox was signed as an unrestricted free agent by the Tennessee Titans, he executed his long snapping duties to perfection during the 2021-2022 NFL regular season and played an important role for the Titans in the playoffs. And whereas Morgan Cox has earned his rightful place among the best long snappers of all time as a 4-time Pro Bowl honoree, the first long snapper to be named All-Pro, 2012 Super Bowl champion, and essential member of the home state Tennessee Titans. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the House of Representatives of the 112th General Assembly of the state of Tennessee that we honor and commend Morgan Cox, Tennessee native, UT graduate, and All-Pro long snapper for the Tennessee Titans, and extend to him our best wishes for much continued success in football and in life.
Representative Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Okay, imagine that you toil at your job in relative obscurity, except for the fact that whenever you do your job, you have literally millions of people watching you do your job. And they will probably only know your name if you mess up. My good friend Morgan Cox in 12 years has not messed up. It's been quite a run for him. You know, it's funny, the biggest notoriety he's received was the year that the Ravens won the Super Bowl and the lights went out in the dome. And when they came back on, him and Ray Lewis were playing catch together, and they were covering it on TV. We were so excited. It's like, there's Morgan, and he doesn't have his helmet on. And we were very pleased for his success. His dad, I served with on the Collierville School Board. He's been my banker for 40 years. His family, his grandfather was an early mentor of mine, served with distinction as the mayor of Collierville for over 3 decades. His wife is Lauren is not here today. He's got a house full of young kids, but his mother-in-law and I were friends back during Memphis State days. So he is someone who is well known in our district. And Morgan, I believe you know what district that is. The District of Champions. Thank you. So I bring you a Super Bowl champion who was born and bred in Collierville, Tennessee. We're proud to honor you, not only as a Colliervillian, but also as a Tennessean. So, Morgan, if you would say a few words.
Thanks so much. I'm truly honored to be here, and I mean, honored to represent the state of Tennessee. And it's so great to be back home after being gone for so long. But yeah, just love that I get to play in front of all my family and friends that I grew up in Collierville, went to school in Knoxville, and now I get to play professionally here in Nashville. So I feel like I've made the round trip. So honored to be here. Thank you so much for this, and yeah, thank you.
Sure. Representative Vaughn.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If you don't mind, if you would come down and join us for a picture. And I would also like to invite any Tennessee football fans, any Titans fans to come join us, and let's celebrate this fine young man.
Welcome and honoring Representative Sherrill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. Up in my left side, up in the gallery up here, if you would make a group of folks welcome here. We have some from our Speaker's District up in Cumberland County. We have some from White County. We have some from Warren County. Our Mennonites, would the Mennonites please stand? And would you welcome them, please? Thank you.
Representative Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, today I have my better half with me. If you would, please make her feel welcome, my wife, Leanne.
Representative Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to wish the MTSU Lady Raiders good luck tonight on their semifinal game against Seton Hall in the semifinals of the NIT. They are undefeated at home, and so I'm looking forward to them playing tonight. And secondly, since we will not be here tomorrow, I would like to wish my wife, Cheryl, a happy early birthday. Thank you.
Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Speaker. I just want to wish my mother-in-law and father-in-law, Don and Jane Carringer, a very, very happy 65th anniversary. And I know you all are going to say, love your father-in-law's heart, because he's the one that introduced me and his son. It was a blind date. So I always told him he cannot complain about his daughter-in-law because he picked me. So happy anniversary to Dawn and Jane. I love you very much. And thank you for allowing me to be your wife's, your son's wife. Thank you.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Up to my right here, members, please help me welcome the Giles Youth Leadership Group. They'll stand up and wave at us. There you go. Thank you all for coming.
Representative Warner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, please help me welcome Mr. Goodman and the Marshall County Interact Club right up here in the balcony.
Representative Vital.
Mr. Speaker, members, please join me in introducing Brad Bennett, Superintendent of Chickamauga Chattanooga National Military Park, the nation's first and oldest national military park, 8,000 acres dedicated to those who fought in the Civil War, created by veterans of both sides together. Before Gettysburg, there was Chickamauga Chattanooga National Military Park. Thank you, sir.
Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to make an announcement, please, along with Representative Farmer here. I wish we would all, in a moment, have a word of silence. You know, it says history repeats itself, but in 2016, we had a bad fire up there, and as of right now in Sevier County, we have over 3,700 acres in the Hatcher Mountain area on fire. That does not include the fires that we have going toward Gatlinburg and Seymour. We only have about 5% containment. We had 5 fire apparatuses that were damaged. Over 100 plus structures. We had 1 fireman that was trapped. He was evacuated with no injuries. We've had 1 injury up there. And it looks like if we cannot get this stopped, that just it is going, we'll go plumb to the Blount County line, and we hope that doesn't happen. But if, Mr. Speaker, if we could just have just a moment of silence for all the 200 plus people that are working there right now. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I have an announcement that I think is very important for Tennessee and for you. From the mountains this weekend, from the mountains to the plateau to the plains of Tennessee, you're going to find people getting in the woods to hunt turkey. One of my good friends is a preacher over in the Appalachians, and he wrote a poem about this turkey hunting, and I feel obliged to read it to y'all. Are you ready for this? 'Twas the night before turkey season, and all through the state, alarm clocks were set in hopes the hunters wouldn't be late. Camo clothing all laid out, each garment was inspected with care. Concealment is the task if a gobbler would be lured into a hunter's lair. Shotguns were cleaned and each one was patterned. Nothing is left to chance, the first shot is what matters. All the favorite calls were packed, the boxes, the wing boxes, the pots. They played the calls in their sleep, nervously resting with their stomachs in knots. And dreams where grandpa's now gone, and their hopes was their boy's first strutter. Each had the secret tactics of which they dare not utter. Only a few more minutes and the clocks will ring. Coffee now poured and off in the truck, off to hunt the best day of spring. Happy Turkey Day, y'all, and that is from my friend Tracy Jones in South Greene, Tennessee.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just wanted to honor our Memphis Grizzlies, who last night clinched the #2 seed in the Western Conference and in the first Southwest Division title in team history, and are in a great position going into the upcoming playoffs. Thank you.
Representative Littleton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome our youth leadership from Dixon County, Annabelle Ellis, Annabeth Thompson, and Katie Hale. They're up here, so let's give them a great big welcome.
Representative Whitson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, 2 announcements. First, let's welcome to the world Lily Jo Conway, the daughter of my legislative assistant, Amanda Conway, and her husband, Brandon, was born this morning, and mom and baby are doing well. And we will wish all the best for this great family. And my other announcement is 37 years ago, we can show that the American dream, if you work hard and the free enterprise system works, you can succeed. And my friend over here, Eddie Manis, started his company 37 years ago. And with 3 employees now, he has 11 locations, over 100 employees. And congratulations, Eddie, for success and all you do for your community.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. A young lady in my district and neighbor, Ms. Taylor Cantrell, was at the 94th Tennessee FFA convention this week, and she was nominated and won the state president. So I just want to congratulate Taylor Cantrell on her accomplishments. A fine young lady, good attitude, sweetest of spirits, and just an all-around good person. I just want to congratulate her.
Representative Ramsey.
And thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would like to piggyback on Representative Carr and Chairman Farmer's announcement about the fire. We have in Blount County a volunteer group called BUSAR, Backcountry Search and Rescue, that is integral to the success of fighting that fire. We had an HJR last week for them, 987. It's a regional group that of trainees, veteran service members, firefighters, aviation specialists, tracking, and medical specialists, and they train in Blount County to serve the public in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park and East Tennessee region. So I want to say, recognize them and say thank you to BUSAR.
Representative Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for coming back to me. I failed to mention an important member of our group that's here visiting with us today. I didn't see him because there was a pillar between us, but our mayor of Pulaski, Mr. Pat Ford, is with us today. Help him feel welcome. Thank you.
Representative Sparks.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on the way in, coming up I-24 from Rutherford County, I come up on a bad motorcycle wreck between a tractor trailer and a motorcycle. I watched Laverne Police rendering aid. I seen the TDOT help truck on the way. I seen the emergency response vehicles on the way. And just want to give a shout out to our THP officers. When I first got elected, I watched a trooper changing a flat tire on the side of the road of a senior citizen, and it was Trooper Brian Carmouche in the pouring rain. So let's just give a round of applause for our emergency response and our THP and our Laverne Police. Thank you so much.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of resolutions.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar, refer to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory and memorializing in line of the desk be placed on the consent calendar, pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Resolutions lying over.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Introduction of bills.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bills 2911 through 2912 be introduced and passed on first consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on first consideration.
Leader Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that Senate Bills 1748, 1827, 1859, 1912, 1986, 2043, 2134, 2139, 2150, 2201, 2231, 2232, 2251, 2262, 2282, 2299, 2303, 2306, 2400, 2402, 2405, 2463, 2564, 2570, and 2924 transmitted by the Senate be held on the desk pending third consideration of the companion House bills.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration, petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration in keeping with Rule 50.
Chairman moves passage of the consent calendar. Probably second, Mr. Clerk. Any objections been
Mr.
filed?
Speaker, no objections filed.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we're voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. All those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Having received a constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar.
Call the first bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2180 by Representative Baum and others relative to wholesaler information reports. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2430.
Representative Baum moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2430, properly second without objection. So ordered. Representative Baum.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2430 on third and final consideration.
Representative Baum moves passage of Senate Bill 2430 on third and final consideration, properly second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Finance, Ways and Means Committee Amendment Number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment Number 1.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Same as Senate Amendment Number 1. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, Amendment Number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr.
No
Clerk.
further amendments, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Baum, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill renews and extends the Retail Accountability Program. This is a program through which wholesalers of certain items like alcoholic beverages, non-alcoholic beverages, food, and candy report their sales to retailers. The state then uses this information to gauge the accuracy of sales tax collections. This program has been used to help the state make sure it collects the sales tax that is owed. And thank you. I renew my motion.
Representative Baum renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2430 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Reagan, aye. Crawford, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 87, no nays.
Senate Bill 2430, I received a constitutional majority. I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1895 by Chairman Reagan and others relative to school sports.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1895 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage, properly second. Mr. Clerk, any amendments been filed?
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, as you may recall, we passed a bill last year that required boys to play boys and girls to play girls in K through 12. And this bill is putting teeth into it. What it does is allow the Commissioner of Education, after rules are promulgated by the state board, to withhold fund to any LEA that does not comply with that. With that explanation, I stand ready to answer questions.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1895, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 66, 22 nays.
House Bill 1895, having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2569 by Chairman Reagan relative to discrimination and preferences in government.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2569 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves passage, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House State Government Committee Amendment Number 1.
Chairman Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This amendment does rewrite the bill. I'll defer to the Chairman Reagan for further explanation. We move to adopt.
Chairman Kiesling moves adoption of Amendment Number 1, properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of Amendment Number 1 say aye, aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopt it. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Simply put, this bill rakes into one place in the code the fact that subunits of state government, which include counties, cities, and a number of others, are bound to follow state law. It also repeats a portion of the code that says race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin shall not be used to discriminate either for or against. This bill does not prohibit bona fide occupational qualifications based on sex, nor does it invalidate any consent decree that is in full force when this bill goes into effect. It does not prohibit actions required to maintain ineligibility for a federal program or federally funded program where ineligibility would be the result. Furthermore, this does not preempt any state law in existence as of the effective date of this act that provides for preference or individual or groups of individuals with respect to public contract or procurement of public contracts. It adds a cause of action for a violation for the individual. With that explanation, I stand ready to answer questions and renew my motion.
Chairman Reagan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor yield.
Representative Reagan.
I yield.
Representative Miller.
Representative Reagan, I'm reading the language of the bill, and I want to focus in on B, the state shall not discriminate against or grant preferential treatment to an individual or group based on individuals' groups, race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin in the operation of any aspect of public employment, public education, or public contracting. First question, Representative Reagan, does public contracting include contracts, let's say, with Department of Transportation, Department of Education, Health, and all other categories?
Representative Reagan.
If I understand your question correctly, sir, any contract, public contract that's in effect at the time this law goes into effect will not be effective for procurement or public contracting.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Again, does the language that I just read to you, which mentioned public contracting, how do we define public contracting? And my question, does public contracting covers, let's say, for an example, the Department of Transportation, Department of Education? For an example, if there are any contracts that are bidded, would that include all of those departments?
Representative Reagan.
If I understand your question correctly, the answer is yes, this is included. Now, again, let me specify if I couch that on understanding your question.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, sir. I think you answered the question. Thank you for that. Representative Reagan, probably over the last 15 years, I would say the state has contracted several $1 billion in contracts that covers every department probably in state government. Billions, not millions. And under all of those contracts, Representative Reagan, if you were to ask the question based on fact, what percentage of those contracts was received by women? I got an answer. Do you know what percentage? Oh,
Representative Reagan.
I would be guessing, sir, so I can't give you a correct answer.
Representative Miller.
less than 1%. If I were to ask you the question, what percentage of those contracts over the last 15 years, several $1 billion, were awarded to African Americans? Would you have an answer to that? Would you know what the percentage?
On you, I will rely on you, sir. Go ahead.
Representative Miller.
Less than 1%. What about small businesses? Would you know what percentage of those contracts covering every department in state government was received by small businesses?
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And no, I don't, but I will point out that small businesses are not a protected class, sir.
Representative Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative Reagan, when we talk about preference, because my understanding of this language based on what I've read, it becomes a question of who's actually receiving preferences. Because if women are receiving less than 1%, African Americans are receiving less than 1%, there could be a situation where, God, we don't believe in aliens, but if one were to come to this state and ask that question, what percentage of contracts, what percentage of contracts do minorities receive? I mean, what would they even think?
Representative Reagan.
Again, your question, I believe, sir, is not addressing this, because if these contracts are not awarded to minorities because of discrimination against them, this bill basically says that they can't do that. You cannot discriminate against those groups that you've mentioned.
Representative Miller.
I understand it's a preference, but again, if we were to even define preference, a greater liking for one over another, definition of preference, and if we were to say prefer, tend to choose better than another, and to insinuate or imply, if you were just using some common understanding, the question is, who's actually receiving preference? Because out of all of those contracts and the numbers, and I'm just following the numbers, then the groups that you are impacting are not receiving preferences. Representative Reagan. Thank you, sir.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you for the explanation there. And I will point out that discrimination, either for or against, is still discrimination. And this bill is intended to eliminate discrimination.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does this bill take away local control over their operations as it relates to this subject?
Representative Reagan.
Local control is still maintained as long as those individuals are following state law. What this bill does in the first paragraph is rake together from other portions of the code all of those who are subunits of state government or other empowered by state government and say they must follow state law.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I'm going to ask this a different way. Does this bill change state law that now takes away local control over these aspects, and now they have to be, is there going to be a change? I'll ask it this way. Would there be a change to the way the local government entities operate as a result of this bill?
Representative Reagan.
If these local entities are discriminating, the answer is yes. They should not be discriminating anyway. And I will point out that the majority of what I just read to you there is pulled from other portions of our code. This does not change what's in our code already.
Representative McKenzie.
Thank you. And last question. Does this, have you found one example, one piece of a case or anything brought to you where there was discrimination done at the local level?
Representative Reagan.
I would prefer not to answer that question with direct names, but I will point out that in this very chamber, long before you were in it, sir, we had a case where a county tried to override state law. And this is making sure, by putting everything in one place, that we have clarity that no subunit of state government or any entity that is empowered by our state can discriminate on the basis of race, sex, color, ethnicity, or national origin.
Representative Towns. Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to hold this on the desk.
Without objection. Is that the right one? Held on desk. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2457 by Chairman Kiesling and others, relative to seizure of personal property. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Kiesling, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2868.
Chairman Kiesling moves to substitute and conform Senate Bill 2868, probably second. Without objection, so ordered. Chairman Kiesling.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage, Senate Bill 2868 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Keesley moves passage of Senate Bill 2868 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Agricultural and Natural Resources Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker. It's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Halford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Keesley, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if I may, the summary on a physical note on this one is spot on. It's very simple. It just prohibits the Tennessee Wildlife Resource Agency, TWRA, from seizing any personal property of a person without the process. It further requires a court order prior to seizure of the personal property. Footnote, we're only taught, this is only limited to the vehicle and or its trailer that could be attached. This does not include guns or anything else. It's just a vehicle and a trailer if it's attached. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will renew my motion and entertain any questions.
Chairman Keesley renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Lafferty.
Hey, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wasn't part of, have not seen any of the discussion around this. I'm just curious, the rationale behind not taking the vehicles or the trailers if someone has violated the law there.
Chairman Keesley.
I have no background on that. It's just, we don't have any problem with the, with personal property, the ammo and the guns and all that. It's just to allow the persons that could be arrested or convicted to at least have a way back to the house. I mean, it's just the way it works. That's the way we wanted to do it. So,
Representative Lafferty.
Sorry if I cut you off. Didn't mean to do that. So taking somebody's vehicle would obviously create a hardship for them. I just wanted to get a little clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2868 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 78, 11 nays.
Senate Bill 2868 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Let the journal reflect Representative Casta is excused. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1698 by Representative Jernigan and others relative to blasting. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute conform to House Bill 2055.
Representative Jernigan moves to substitute conform to Senate Bill 2055. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Jernigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2055.
Representative Jernigan moves passage of Senate Bill 2055 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Commerce Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Vaughn, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Commerce Committee Amendment 1 is the same as the Senate Amendment 1. Therefore, I must regretfully move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I feel bad for Chairman Vaughn, but I appreciate his efforts. Members, House Bill 1698, last year I worked with the road builders, and this bill will modernize and update the blasting standards for eliminating outdated blast vibration compliance options, restructure, clarifying blast notification requirements, and providing administrative support for market industry changes. In regard to residential blasting, which I had a lot of it last year, this will lower vibrations for residents living near blast sites, increase communications for the public, and clean up the standards that have been on the books since 1975. So with that explanation, Mr. Speaker, I will renew my motion.
Representative Jernigan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Weaver.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, thank you so much for bringing this to the body. Many folks in this body on both sides of the aisles have worked very hard on this issue as our constituents call, and kind of like a thorn in the side. And it was very difficult to negotiate this legislation. As I said, many of us have worked on it. I applaud you for hanging in there, and hopefully we can cause more awareness on constituents who have their homes, which are their largest asset, and the nuisance of what goes on close to their homes. Now, I know some of those quarries have been there longer than the homes, and it's just kind of a bittersweet thing. But I want to thank you for bringing it, and hopefully this does move the needle to where we can further make it accommodable for good neighbors. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further questions? Representative Beck.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sponsor, thank you so much for bringing this. I have complaints and constituent contacts from one end of my district to the other with all the construction and all the blasting that goes on in Nashville and surrounding areas. This has become a hot topic, and I appreciate you moving the ball toward the goal lines. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Representative Jernigan.
Thank you both for saying that, and I need to thank the road builders and the pipeline folks for working with me and seeing that there were issues, and I'm just happy we were able to move forward a little bit. So, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2055 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Senate Bill 2055 having received a constitutional majority, I hereby declare it passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2037 by Representative Jernigan and others relative to driver's licenses for minors. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2176.
Representative Jernigan moves substitute and form of Senate Bill 2176, properly seconded without objection. So ordered. Representative Jernigan.
Mr. Speaker, move passage of Senate Bill 2176 on third and final consideration.
Representative Jernigan moves passage of Senate Bill 2176 on third and final consideration, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This corrects a drafting error in the bill. Move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption of House Amendment number 1, probably seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, House Bill 2030, Senate Bill 2176 would remove the provision in code known as no pass, no drive. Currently, in order for a minor to receive a driver's license, a student must show satisfactory grades. And even if they show satisfactory grades, the school can still deny access to a driver's license. Furthermore, if a student is maybe in their junior year and their grades fell below, Department of Safety will then go and pull their driver's license. Many students are struggling in a classroom and they face hardship in their personal lives, things that we don't know about. Their ability to drive or inability to drive only is more obstacles to their path to success. They may need it to go to the doctor's office, or they can't get a job without a driver's license at that age. But at the end of the day, I think the parent should decide whether or not they have a driver's license and not the school. And so I will say that truancy is still in here. If you're truant, you shouldn't get a driver's license because you need to go to school. But with that explanation, I'll be happy to take any questions, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Jernigan renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Representative, first of all, thank you for being patient and letting us re-refer this to Education Administration a few weeks back. Great bill. We fully support it, and thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2176 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
Senate Bill 2176, having received the constitutional majority, hereby declare passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 653 by Chair Lady Hazelwood and others relative to public finance. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 0535.
Chair Lady Hazelwood moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Local Government Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, it's the same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Hazelwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill simply requires that the state treasurer give written approval to any Tennessee local government, governmental entity before they enter into any agreements to pay, compensate, award, or remit funds in the form of cryptocurrency, blockchain, non-fungible tokens, or virtual currency. This would expire on June 30th, 2025, and this is simply an effort. Cryptocurrency is incredibly volatile, as we all know, so this is just an effort to let us see more about how that form of currency is going to actually work in the marketplace before our governmental entities are involved in utilizing it in their daily business. With that, Mr. Speaker, I would renew my motion.
Chair Lady Hazelwood renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Powell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I appreciate the sponsor talking to me about this bill beforehand. I have reservations about it. I think that this is a step back for us as a state, for a lot of these different businesses that are looking at innovation. But my question for you specifically is, are there any sort of guidelines or parameters for how the treasurer is going to judge and decide upon what he approves and what he doesn't approve? And are those going to be made public?
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Don't have those guidelines, but I do want to make it clear that this just applies to governmental entities, local governments, not any businesses, unless, of course, they were doing business with local governments.
Representative Powell.
I appreciate that. Well, hopefully we can get some clarity from the treasurer and just, you know, he can let us know how he's going to go about deciding what he approves or disapproves. Because I know there are governments, there's a city of Jackson, Tennessee is looking to pay people in Bitcoin, which people may or may not be against, but I think his whole intent there is to try to lure young people to the city and the state. So I just think this is going a little bit in the wrong direction, but I do appreciate the fact that you've put in this expiration date so we can revisit this in the future. And again, you know, I'm a no, but I understand where you're coming from in this. Thank you.
Chair Lady Hazelwood.
Thank you. And again, I just want to reiterate that the intent of the legislation is just to give us some time as a state, give the treasurer some time to just really determine and gather data on how the cryptocurrency moves forward and whether or not it's a reliable currency for our local governments to use.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I really appreciate you bringing this. I think this legislation does not at all prevent employees of local governments from converting their own currency into anything they want to, as they can do today. But we also have to remember that each one of these entities is a subdivision of the state and exists at the will of this legislature for the protection of the citizens, and that's our first and foremost responsibility, to protect their freedoms and liberties. And I appreciate you bringing this. Thank you.
Chair Lady Hazelwood. All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor, Senate Bill 535, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 73, 14 nays, 1 present, not voted.
Senate Bill 535, and received constitutional majority, hereby declare passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2514 by Chairman Crawford relative to consumption of alcoholic beverages. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2270.
Chairman Crawford moves substitute and conform Senate Bill 2270 without objection. So ordered. Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2270 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Crawford moves passage of Senate Bill 2270 on third and final consideration. Properly second. Mr. Clerk, call the first amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no amendments filed.
Chairman Crawford, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Basically, House Bill 2514 was brought to me by my local city, Bristol, Tennessee, and they passed a bill similar to this on the Virginia side of the street. And so we need to pass this for the Tennessee side so we can be all working together. But basically, this would require them to go for a festival permit for any festivals that we have. We have one of the largest music festivals in the South called Rhythm and Roots. And this would designate a specific area that the TABC would have to approve and meet all their guidelines that would allow individuals to drink alcoholic beverages within that special district. I renew my motion.
Chairman Crawford renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2270 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote. Hardaway, aye.
Ayes 63, 18 nay, 2 present, not voting.
Senate Bill 2270, having received constitutional majority, everybody declare passed without objection. The motion reads here is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2733 by Chairman Wendell relative to Veterans Day.
Chairman Wendell at your desk.
Mr. Speaker, may I roll that bill to Monday, please?
Without objection, roll to Monday. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1962 by Chairman Curcio relative to estates.
Chairman Curcio, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 1962 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Curcio moves passage. Properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1.
Representative Russell, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move to adopt.
Chairman Russell moves adoption amendment number 1. Properly seconded. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none, all those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. You adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Curcio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I renew my motion.
Chairman Curcio renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 1962 as amended vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 87, no nays.
House Bill 1962 and received constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed without objection. The motion reconsider is tabled. Next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2699 by Representative Parkinson relative to voluntary acknowledgements of paternity. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Representative Parkinson, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1779.
Representative Parkinson moves to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 1779. Probably second without objection. So ordered. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 1779 on third and final consideration.
Representative Parkinson moves passage of Senate Bill 1779 on third and final consideration. Probably second. Mr. Clerk, call it First Amendment.
House Civil Justice Committee Amendment number 1. Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Russell, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This bill removes the 5-year statute of limitation for challenging voluntary acknowledgement of paternity on the basis of fraud, duress, or mistake of fact. With that, Mr. Speaker, I renew my motion.
Representative Parkinson renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 1779 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 69, 17 nay, 2 present, not voted.
Senate Bill 1779 and received a constitutional majority. Everybody declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 2559 by Chairman Terry relative to child care. Mr. Speaker, Senate bills on the desk.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2723.
Chairman Terry moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2723, probably second. Without objection, so ordered. Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2723 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Terry moves passage of Senate Bill 2723 on third and final consideration, probably second. Mr. Clerk, call First Amendment.
House Health Committee Amendment number 1, Mr. Speaker, same as Senate Amendment number 1.
Chairman Leatherwood, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw.
Without objection, amendment number 1 withdrawn. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chairman Terry, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Under current law, a child may be placed in a drop-in child care center for a maximum of 7 hours per day and 14 hours during regular weekday business hours. As current law does not accommodate an average workday, this bill will simply increase the maximum daily hours to 9 and maximum weekday business hours to 18. With that explanation, I renew my motion.
Chairman Terry renews his motion. Any discussion on the bill? Representative Powell. Adjourn his desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I broke my microphone. Just a quick question. So this expands the hours for drop-in daycares. Is that correct? It doesn't limit them.
Chairman Terry.
Yes, sir, that is correct.
Representative Powell.
Thank you. I appreciate this bill. Anything we can do to help out working families have access to childcare, I think is essential in this state. And so I appreciate you expanding those hours. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Speaker. To the sponsor, why do we have these maximum hours for drop-in daycare?
Chairman Terry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. It's a great question. There are different, my understanding is there are different levels of daycares that are out there. And as you go up the different levels, they have different rules and regulations. So there may be like a casual care center that only has, like at your church or something, only has 2. This is a drop-in center. There's other levels beyond that. So it's based off of that.
Representative Hardaway.
So we can assume that the state will adjust its regulations and oversight to meet the new hours, and our children will still be protected.
Chairman Terry.
The rules that follow the drop-in centers will still apply to this. Those rules and regulations will still apply to this.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you. And in essence, this is about child care, it's about economics, it's about education. It allows working parents to have the flexibility that goes with today's economy.
Representative Terry.
Absolutely. This is for whether it's single moms or 2-income families being able to get child care in those things. And so it's expanding that opportunity for them. So absolutely, yes.
Representative Hardaway.
I thank you on behalf of all the working parents in my district. Thank you, Speaker. Thank you, sponsor.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2723 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Parkinson's aye. Williams aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, no nays.
Senate Bill 2723 having received constitutes majority, everybody declare passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Resolution 170 by Chairman Powers.
Chairman Powers, at your desk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I request that this be rolled to the April 11th calendar.
Taking a chance. Roll to April 11th without objection. Representative Parkinson, for what purpose?
Mr. Speaker, and I know I'm out of order, but I'm sure y'all are used to that. I just want to recognize and welcome Mr. Mark Russell. He is the executive editor of our newspaper in Memphis and Shelby County, the Commercial Appeal. He is right here on the floor behind us. Y'all please make him feel welcome.
Your favorite line, Representative Parkinson, you're out of order. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1749 by Chairman Reagan and others relative to state agencies. Mr. Speaker, the Senate bill is on the desk.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2285.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute form Senate Bill 2285, properly second with objection. So ordered. Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of Senate Bill 2285 on third and final consideration.
Chairman Reagan moves substitute and conform to Senate Bill 2285, properly to substitute and conform. Chairman Reagan moves passage of Senate Bill 2285 on third and final consideration, properly second. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments filed.
Chairman Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the bill that we heard before, and my colleague that had some questions in the past a chance to comment, sir.
Chairman Reagan renews the motion. Any discussion? Representative Garrett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And Chairman Reagan, I just want to thank you for working with me. I knew I had some questions last week. We have spoken about this legislation, and those questions have been answered, and I appreciate the legislation. I'm going to support it. So thank you very much for your cooperation and for your willingness to work with me to further my understanding of the legislation. So I really appreciate it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Bill 2285 vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member cast their vote, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 66, 23 nays.
Senate Bill 2285 and receive a constitutional majority. Hereby declare passed without objection. Motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a regular calendar 2 pursuant to the rule suspension made earlier today. Regular calendar number 2, House Bill 2021 by Chair Lady Littleton relative to child abuse training programs.
Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of House Bill 2021 on third and final consideration.
Chair Lady Littleton moves passage upon considered. Mr. Clerk, call up First Amendment.
House Education Administration Committee Amendment number 1.
Chairman White, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to adopt.
Chairman White moves adoption amendment number 1, properly second. Any discussion on amendment? Seeing none. All those in favor of amendment number 1 say aye. Aye. All those opposed say no. The ayes have it. Adopted. Next amendment, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, no further amendments.
Chair Lady Littleton, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And this bill was brought to me by these young ladies and the Dixon County leadership. They're very concerned about the safety of our children, and they brought this to me, so I'm very proud to introduce it for them. It expands from teachers to all employees working directly with students the requirement to complete the child abuse training program during annual in-service training. And with that, I renew my motion.
Chair Lady Littleton renews her motion. Any discussion on the bill? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Bill 2021 as amended, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Parkinson, aye. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 86, no nays.
House Bill 2021 and receive a constitutional majority. Hereby declare passed without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Call up next bill, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the House has a message calendar.
Call the first message, Mr. Clerk.
House Bill 1677 by Representative Sapicki relative to county government. Mr. Speaker, on March 24, 2022, the Senate substituted House Bill 1677 for Senate Bill 1774, adopted Amendment 1 and passed House Bill 1677 as amended.
Chairman Speaker, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, let me give you a brief explanation. This has to do with the online notices that we allowed our local governments to do. There was a change from the Senate, and what it did is once they give notice, they cannot have that meeting for 5 days prior or after that notice has been posted. That's all. Mr. Speaker, I move to concur in Senate Amendment 1.
Chairman Speaker moves to concur in Senate Amendment number 1, probably second. Any discussion on the amendment? Seeing none. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of Senate Amendment number 1, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. As every member voted, does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 88, no nays.
Senate Amendment number 1 and receive a constitutional majority. Hereby declare it concurred in without objection. The motion to reconsider is tabled. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Senate Bill 1782 by Chairman Halsey relative to county officers Mr. Speaker, on March 28, 2022, the Senate refused to receive this action and non-concurring in House Amendment 1 and appointed a conference committee.
Chairman Holsey, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to accede to the request of the Senate and ask that a conference committee be appointed to confer with a like committee from the Senate to resolve the differences between the two bodies.
Chairman Holsey moves to accede of the request of the Senate and ask the conference committee be appointed to confer with a like committee from the Senate to resolve the differences between the two bodies. Properly second. Without objection, motion carries. I appoint the following members: Representative Holsey, Representative Campbell, Representative Sexton of Granger, and Representative Wendell. Next message, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, that completes the message calendar.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Leader Lambert, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the rules be suspended for immediate introduction and consideration of House Resolution number 177.
Mr. Clerk, please read the caption.
House Resolution 177 by Leader Lambert, the resolution to approve annual events by certain 501c organizations in accordance with provisions of Article 11, Section 5 of the Constitution of Tennessee and pursuant to the Tennessee Nonprofit Gaming Law.
You've heard the caption. Any objections? Without objection, the rules suspended. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This is the annual nonprofit gating extension that we grant to organizations. Again, usually every single year. So I move that adoption of House Resolution number 177.
Leader Lambert moves adoption of House Resolution 177. Probably second. Any objection to the question? Seeing none. All those in favor of House Resolution 177, vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed, vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 89, no nays.
House Resolution 177 received a vote in the affirmative by 2/3 majority of the members elected to the 112th General Assembly. I hereby declare adopted. Without objection, the motion to reconsider is tabled. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 2147 be heard in the Finance, Ways and Means Subcommittee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Move that House Bill 2143, 2730, 2454, 2604, 324, 2606, 2094, and 1210 be heard to the Education Administration Committee next week.
You've heard the motion. Any objection? Without objection, so ordered. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, we have some messages from the Senate. Mr. Speaker, I'm directed to return to the House. House Bill 1853, substitute for the Senate bill in the same subject, amended and passed by the Senate.
Monday's message calendar. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, message from the Senate. I'm directed to transmit to the House Senate Bill 2448. The Senate refused to receive this action non-concurring in House Amendments 1 and 2. The Speaker appointed a conference committee composed of Senators White, Bailey, Johnson, Stevens, Yarborough to confer with a like committee from the House in open conference to resolve the differences between the bodies on Senate Bill 2448.
Monday's message calendar. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. Representative Chairman White.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if I have your attention, we have been given extra time in House Education Administration Committee next week to complete our calendar. Besides our regular time, which is Wednesday at 3:30, we're also going to meet on Tuesday at 1 o'clock. That's April 5th, next Tuesday at 1 o'clock. So if you still have bills in House Administration, come prepared on Tuesday. Or we don't finish, we'll finish on Wednesday. Thank you.
Thank you. Chairman Doggett.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House Criminal Justice Subcommittee, we will go back to one day, our regular scheduled time, 9 a.m. on Wednesday morning of next week. That will be our only day of meeting next week. If you do have a bill on that calendar, please be there on Monday and not Tuesday. Thank you.
Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Due to us winding down, the House full committee will meet at 10 o'clock Tuesday in House Hearing Room 1, 10 o'clock.
Chairman Kershaw.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I've got two important announcements dealing with criminal justice, so if you could please listen up. If you have a bill that was set for April the 6th, which is our next committee meeting, I want you to know that first the committee will be holding a hearing on hemp-based cannabinoids during the first hour of our meeting on Wednesday. So if you have a bill up and you're not on the committee, you're welcome to come and listen, but I want you to know we won't be taking up bills until after the first hour of the committee. But please watch the committee so that you'll know when your bill is called. And then my second announcement is that the Criminal Justice Committee will be holding all cannabis bills for a special cannabis calendar. And the date for that calendar will be Wednesday, April the 20th, 4/20.
Chairman Rudd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to announce the Elections and Campaign Finance Subcommittee is closed, subject to the call of the chair.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And to my colleague, Chairman, that idea of doing the cannabis legislation on 4/20, that's a dope idea. I like it.
Chair Lady Moody.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And members, yesterday, House Instruction Full is closed till the call of the chair. So thank you.
Thank you. Any further announcements? Chairman Crawford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I need to make a correction. I did not tell you which committee would be meeting Tuesday at 10 o'clock. So that will be your full local government committee. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Any further announcements? Seeing none. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Roll call.
Roll call. Take the roll, Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, 88 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Gant, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House stand in recess until 5 p.m. on Monday, April 4th, 2022.
Without objection, the House stands recessed till 5 p.m. on Monday, April 4th, 2022.